We often just accept the historical dates and stories we're given, right? Like they just magically appeared in a textbook. But today, we're actually going to look under the hood. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the fascinating detective work behind reconstructing the history of Uttar Pradesh. We're talking about digging into the raw data, the physical evidence, and the incredible historiographical foundations that actually let us know what happened thousands of years ago.
So let's dive right in and ask the ultimate detective's question. How do we actually prove what happened over 4 millennia ago? Seriously, think about that for a second. 4,000 years. That is a timeline where oral traditions completely fade out, wooden structures just rot away, and entire bustling cities can literally be buried under the dirt. And yet, historians have managed to confidently piece together a rich, super detailed timeline of this specific region. How? Well, that's exactly the giant puzzle we're solving today.
And honestly, it's absolutely crucial to understand why this matters so much. We aren't just talking about a few years of localized random events. We are talking about a region that is the foundational bedrock of the Ganga-Jamuni culture. This area has been a continuous beating heart of Indian civilization. It has deeply, deeply influenced the social, political, and economic evolution of the entire subcontinent. So understanding how we know its history is kind of like understanding the history of civilization itself.
To solve this 4,000-year-old mystery, we're going to open up the historian's toolkit and look at 6 key areas: unlocking 4,000 years of history, coins and numismatic evidence, inscriptions or stories in stone, architecture and ancient sites, literature and foreign accounts, and finally, we'll see how the complete historical picture comes together.
All right, let's start with Part 1, Unlocking 4,000 Years of History.
See, historians are a lot like detectives. They don't just rely on one type of clue, they look for very specific evidence to answer specific questions. Coins? They primarily tell us about economic history and trade. Inscriptions are our go-to for political history and timelines. And architecture? That reveals the everyday cultural and religious life of the people. It's a highly multidisciplinary approach.
Which brings us to Part 2, coins, or the numismatic evidence. Now, before we look at the actual evidence, the fancy official term you need to know here is numismatics. It's basically the study of coins. And if you want to sound like a pro at your next dinner party, just drop that word into the conversation. Numismatics is a really vital primary source because coins are virtually indestructible, they're minted by official authorities, and they travel, which maps out ancient trade routes for us.
Get this, around 300 to 400 ancient coins were discovered in just one single area, the Sambal district of Uttar Pradesh. Imagine unearthing a massive cache of over 300 metal discs that haven't seen the light of day for centuries. This isn't just a lucky find either. A concentration of coins like this gives historians a statistically significant sample size to really study the state of the ancient economy.
And the really fascinating part is what was actually stamped on this money. These coins from Sambal bear images of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. This is a huge deal because it instantly connects ancient economic conditions with religious beliefs. It tells us that the political authority minting this money actively wanted to align themselves with these specific cultural icons. So through a simple piece of metal, we're suddenly learning about trade, state religion, and the visual arts of the time.
All right, let's shift gears to Part 3, inscriptions, or stories in stone.
Our big buzzword here is epigraphy. If numismatics is about coins, epigraphy is the essential science of reading stories that are literally carved into stone. While coins give us broad economic trends, epigraphy gives us the hard details, names, dates, battles, royal decrees. It is absolutely the closest thing we have to a direct text message from an ancient ruler to the modern world.
And we've got 2 massive historical anchors for Uttar Pradesh when it comes to epigraphy. First up, the Batari pillar inscription. This is crucial for establishing the chronology of the Gupta rulers, specifically detailing Skandagupta's really intense conflicts with the Pushyamitras and the Huns. Then you have the Allahabad pillar, also known as the Prayag Prashasti. This one records the immense military achievements of Samudragupta and literally maps out the true extent of the Gupta Empire.
Now, that Allahabad pillar, it was composed by a guy named Harsena, and it is so insanely detailed and glorifying that historians affectionately call it the political biography of Samudragupta. It's not just a marker in the ground, it's basically an ancient PR campaign carved into stone, giving us this unprecedented peek into the political history of the era.
Moving right along to Part 4, Architecture and Ancient Sites.
If you want to grasp the sheer volume of history we're talking about here, just look at the major archaeological gold mines. We're talking about sites like Sarnath, Koshambi, Hastinapur, Ayodhya, and Shravasti. These aren't just tiny dots on a map.
They are sprawling complexes of temples, stupas, and monasteries. These archaeological sources are the actual, physical manifestations of the religious and cultural life of the people who live there, across totally different historical periods.
These places essentially build a massive physical timeline of architectural evolution. We start way back with the Dashavatara Temple in Deogarh, which is an early and super vital example of the Nagara architectural style. Then we see the Bitsargan Temple in Kanpur Dehat, remarkable because it's one of the oldest surviving brick temples. Moving over to Sarnath, we find the Ashokan Pillar, the famous lion capital, and the Dhammik Stupa, a site deeply associated with Buddha's first sermon. Fast forward a bit and we arrive at Fatehpur Sikri, which completely reflects the absolute grandeur of Mughal architecture under Akbar. Every single building is a new chapter in the cultural history of Uttar Pradesh.
Okay, Part 5. Literature and Foreign Accounts.
Now we move from physical ruins to the written word. These ancient texts are like a time machine into the social and political conditions of the era. The Anguttara Nikaya, for example, is a vital text that explicitly proves a whopping 8 of the 16 great ancient kingdoms, the Mahajanapadas, were located right here in present-day Uttar Pradesh. Plus epic texts like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, alongside extensive Buddhist, Jain, and Puranic literature, massively enrich our understanding of how these ancient societies actually functioned.
But here's where the detective work gets really clever. You have to balance the narrative. On one hand, you have internal texts that detail local cultural conditions and traditions. But on the other hand, we have to cross-reference those against external accounts. I'm talking about the objective observations of foreign travelers, like the famous Chinese traveler Xuanzang, who left these incredibly detailed writings describing Harshavardhana's empire based in Kannauj.
Which finally brings us to Part 6, the complete historical picture.
This introduces the absolute holy grail of history: corroborative evidence. Basically, history isn't built on just one random clue. It's built on finding independent, entirely different sources that all point to the exact same truth. This is how we verify that what we're reading or what we're digging up is actually historically accurate, and not just some myth or an anomaly.
And we have a textbook example of this corroborative evidence in action. When Xuanzang visited spots like Varanasi, Kushinagar, and Prayagraj, he meticulously wrote down the religious conditions he saw. And when modern historians look at his external diary, it exactly matches the ruins found by archaeologists, and it matches the cultural conditions written about in the local Puranic and Buddhist literature. When the foreign diary, the local text, and the physical ruins all say the exact same thing, boom, we know we've found the historical truth.
So combining all these distinct fields, that is the secret sauce. It's how we know for sure that Uttar Pradesh is a foremost center of Indian civilization. It is never just one source. It's the numismatic evidence of the Sambal coins, backed up by the epigraphy of the Allahabad Pillar, the archaeology of Sarnath, and all confirmed by those corroborative foreign accounts. Together, they give us a rock-solid understanding of a 4,000-year heritage.
We've seen how historians act as detectives, right? Using this incredible toolkit to rebuild millennia of complex civilization. But the wild part is, the work is never truly finished. If this incredibly rich, detailed tapestry is what we've managed to reconstruct so far, what other hidden coins, buried pillars, or lost texts are just waiting to be discovered right beneath our feet? The history of civilization is still being written. So what do you think we're going to find next?